All right, my name is Brandon Smith. I'm going to show you how to design a reference denture using the TrueDent materials from Stratasys. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the order form. With 3Shape, the order form is the most important piece because if you don't set up the order form correctly, then the whole case will not work for you. So I'm going to right click on the case I've already set up, modify it so we can take a look at the order form together. So with the Dentures module in 3Shape, you have two pieces that you have to set up for the restoration. The first is the gingiva. So you'll use the gingiva button here, and then the very first icon or the leftmost icon here is the denture base material. So you'll select that, and then you can do this one of two ways. You can either have the TrueDent DME file, or you can just set this up as a model material, which is one of the default materials in 3Shape. So you'll want to make sure that you set up both the teeth and the base for that material. To do that, all you do is hover over this plus symbol here at the end, and then in this materials box, you can type in whatever material you want. So if you see as I start to type the word Stratasys, it'll come up with just the Stratasys TrueDent material. Or if I don't have that, I can type in model and I'll use that model material. Either way works fine. I'm going to go ahead and use the Stratasys material just because I have that DME so I can show you how it's set up. The other piece that you'll have to do on here is down at the bottom where it has manufacturing process, depending on what output you want to get from this. So if you want the 3MF file for the color printing, you can do that. You would just select 3MF here. Or if you just want the STLs, that's fine as well. You can select the STL output here. If you choose the model material, it will automatically only give you the STL outputs. It will not give you the 3MF output. So I'll go ahead and choose the 3MF output. Once I have the gingival set up, then I also have to set up the anatomy. So when I select the anatomy button here, I'll also choose the artificial tooth type. And then again, I would have to hover over the plus symbol and select the TrueDent material or the model material. The other thing that you will have to do with these is you do have to also choose the color if you're going to use the Stratasys material. So when I drop down the color box here, this is basically just your shades. So you'll see that there are both base shades in here and tooth shades. So you want to make sure that for the base material, you choose the proper base color, and for the tooth material, you choose the proper tooth shade. From there, it all depends on where the scans come from as well. So if I'm receiving scans from an intraoral scanner, then I will want to make sure that up here at the top right, that the object type is selected as digital impression. If I'm going to scan these on my lab scanner, then I want to make sure that these are set as either impression or model. So impression would be if I'm scanning the reference dentures directly. Model would be if I poured up those reference denture impressions and then made casts of them. I could scan those in that way. So this case, I have digital impressions that were sent to me, so we're going to select that. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and select OK at the bottom right, and now we're going to go into the design process itself. So I'm going to right click here and go into design by this menu here. You can also go up to the top left and select this arrow button here, and that will take you into design as well. All right, so the first step here is the refine step. So anytime you come into a case that's set up for digital impression, you have to do the refine step. What this does is it analyzes the scans and looks for any issues with them. So you can see right here, when I hover over this blue point, it's a mesh artifact, which is just an issue with the scan. A lot of times these will happen in areas where the scan ends. So you can see that this particular doctor did not scan in the palatal surface of this denture. So that's why this mesh artifact is here, because it's right on the edge of where the scan stops. So all I need to do in this step is go ahead and select all and hit the refine button. And this will fix the scan to make sure that I'm able to do things like trim it and design on it. Sometimes without doing this step, what will happen is these scans will give us weird trimmings, maybe just a little sliver of it will show up, and that's has to do with the fact that I did not refine these. The other thing that you'll want to make sure that you do before you move out of the step is check impression. So since this is a impression inside of a denture, it is not a scan of the patient directly. So it's actually a negative where we need a positive surface. So by checking the impression box here before we move forward, software will know to flip those and invert those into an actual model for us. So I'm going to go ahead and select next now. I'll do the same thing on the lower, and then we'll move into the occlusal alignment. So for the occlusal alignment, a lot of times when it's digital impressions, it will show up like this, where the plane does not match what we have here. So the easiest way to correct this is to go ahead and turn off the lower. And then we're going to go down here to the bottom left and select set with points. Once we select that, it'll tell you down here to go ahead and place 3 points to define the occlusal plane. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to make a tripod here where I'll start in the posterior on one side, go to the midline, and then I'll go to the opposite side posterior and click those 3 points. Once I do that, then I'll go ahead and slide this plane into position. What I want is to make sure that the anterior is in the right plane here. This plane that it gives us here with these tooth silhouettes is generic. So it's not going to match every arch form and every size of teeth, but we just want to get it close. What this actually does is it helps us define out the model closure. So what's going to happen at the end of this prepare step is it's actually going to build us digital models of these. With those digital models, it will base the bottoms and actually close the bottoms of the scans. So, but it closes them based on the parallelism to this plane. So once I have this plane set where I want it, I can move forward. So I'll go next. And now I need to trim the scan. So basically what this is I need to trim this into my final model. So I'm not actually marking where the borders of the scan is going to go. I'm actually telling it where I want the edges of the models to stop, or my palatal roll and my buccal rolls and everything here. So I'm actually going to overextend it slightly. And in order to see the detail a little bit better, right now the color is kind of keeping me from being able to really tell any detail. I need to come down to the lower right here, and there's an orb here that has multiple colors in it on this toolbar on the right. Down towards the bottom, you'll see it. If you just select that, it'll make this a monochromatic scan color so that it's easier to see all the nice detail in the scan. Once I have that done, there's an icon over here under outlines that I'm going to select. It's basically the draw outline button. It's green, so I'm going to select that, and when it has the pencil here, I can actually start marking my outline. Now there's really 2 ways I can do it. I can left click and hold and draw, or I can just left click and release and place single points, which I tend to find is the easier way to do this, especially if you're a newer user to the software. So I'm just going to go around here. Now you'll notice that I'm coming outside of the vestibule quite a bit here. Usually I trim this up about 1 to 2 millimeters above the deepest part of the vestibule on the impression. That way I get that nice buccal roll around my vestibule there so I can see a little bit more. This would be very similar to when you bead and box an impression. That's basically what I'm doing here. So I'm going to continue around. When I get to the post-palatal seal area here, I'll kind of go along the edge of it and make sure that I don't under trim it there. Once I select my border there, the surface that I'm going to keep will turn green, and the rest of it that I'm not going to keep will stay the beige color, and that will be removed. Now, When I do this, what it will also do is give me the ability to use the wax rim scan to see those tooth positions. So I won't lose all of that information on here. So now I'm going to select next. And then it'll take me to the lower where I will do the same thing. So I'm going to select my icon, and I can start anywhere I want. And I'm just going to go ahead and start walking around it and marking my outline. Now, as I'm doing this, if you notice, this scan also is missing data here on the back. That's okay as long as you get all of your borders in here on the lingual. The buccal surface you'll need for tooth position. The lingual surface, it's okay to underscan it and leave these holes. This area isn't really used except for this border here. So as long as I have enough information back here, I should be able to trim this up just fine and create some nice models where I'm not missing any information. Once I complete the outline, I can left click and grab and drag some of the points around to reposition them if I need to. Sometimes you'll have to do that if you don't quite get the points right where you want them, or if you get weird areas where the green isn't showing, kind of like right here. So as I drag these points up, now I've got all that green, which is what I want. Little things like this, if I move some of the points around, you'll see it fixes those areas. Once I'm happy with the outline, then I'll go next again. And then it'll take me to the sculpt steps. So at this point now, we'll have actual digital models of our intaglio surface of these impressions. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier on was the refine steps. So if I had not done the refine steps properly, in this step here, instead of this ridge being raised out of the base, I would actually have an indentation instead. So you definitely have to make sure that you check that impression box in that step. That's why it's very important there. The other thing, if I didn't do the occlusal alignment step here, this bottom edge here would be on that same plane as that occlusal alignment step. So if I left it the way it was, I would have some crazy angles here for the bottom of my model. Which is, you know, if I decide later on that I want to, you know, take these models and print them for fits, you want to make sure that they're nice and clean looking like these are. So it's always really important to make sure that you do those occlusal alignments. One of the things I'm going to do here is clean up any issues that were in the impression. So you can see a few little areas where I might want to fix those. Typically what I'll do to do those is I will go into the wax knife tool here and use the smoothing tool. I usually typically will use an intensity here of about 1.4, 1.2 to 1.4 is fine. And then your circle size, you want to make it just bigger than the object. So I can come down a little bit here. So this is about right for this object. And then if I just single left click, you'll see that it eliminates that object there. So I can go around some of these and eliminate them. So that they don't show up in the fit surface of the denture. And by making sure that I just do single clicks to eliminate these, I'm not really altering the surface of the model too much. If I sit there and hold it down, I will continuously smooth, and that will cause the low spots and the high spots to elevate to each other and meet kind of in the middle. So it will definitely alter the surface quite a bit of the denture in that spot. So it's always good to just make sure that you just single click to fix these areas. And really that's all I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select next. And then I'll check the lower as well, doing the same process. So I don't really see anything that I want to fix on the lower. So I'm just going to go ahead and select next here. And this will take me into my next major step of the software, which is the model analysis step. So you can see it brought back here my my wax rims. So now I need to define out the actual occlusal plane that I'm going to be setting the teeth to. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, where I'm going to set 3 points, but I am going to do this a little differently. So rather than setting them on the occlusal surface of those reference dentures, I'm actually going to set them on the buccal surface all the way around on this wax rim here. So again, I need 3 points, which you can see here at the lower left is what it's asking for. It's place 3 points to define the occlusal plane. So I'm going to use the same concept. I'm going to go to the posterior first and mark a point. Then I'm going to go right to where my midline should be and mark a second point. And then I'm going to go to the opposite side and mark the third point. And as I do that, you'll see that the planes show up. There's also a silhouette of the teeth in here. So I want to try to get those silhouettes as close to where I want to place the teeth as possible. So I'm going to go in here and drag this forward, and I can do this by left clicking in the circle and pulling it forward, and then when I release, it'll stop it. So now I need to make sure I slide it over a little bit and get the midline right where the midline of the previous teeth were. Depending on the instructions from the doctor, you want to make sure that you get this as close as possible, unless they tell you things like shift the midline or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get it close. And then I also want to make sure that on either side, when I look at it from this facial view here, that the plane on this side kind of matches the plane on this side in the posterior. This will control the distance from the condyles to those areas. So if I have it twisted, then one side might be closer to the condyles on the virtual articulator than the other. So I want to make sure I get this as close as I can. I also want to make sure that the anterior silhouettes are really close to the anterior of the wax rim or the reference dentures here that I have in this image, so that I can set the teeth right about where the teeth used to be. So I want to make sure that I get them right on that occlusal plane. And then I set my posterior occlusal plane as well to match. And then when I'm satisfied with the positioning, I'll go ahead and select next. This step is a model analysis step. So I'm going to basically just place landmarks on the 2 scans I have here. You can see in this list under characteristic points that I'm going to start here in the maxillary, and I'm going to place tuberosity number 1. So you can see which one you have to place based on this green arrow here. So tuberosity number 1 and number 2 don't particularly have to go on any certain side. You just want to place one on one side and one on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And then I'm going to place right on the tuberosity. And then I'm going to go to the incisive papilla next, based on what it's asking for, the opposite side tuberosity. And then I can use the wax rim for my canine points. So the canine point is supposed to go to the distal of the canine. So right on in that distal interproximal is about where you want to place it. If you need to adjust the positioning a little bit, you can slide it around by left clicking and grabbing a point and moving it there. Now that I've completed the maxillary, I need to go to the mandibular and place those points. So again, you can see it's giving me an arrow here. And this is really the only time that these points matter as to which side you place them on. So if I go ahead and place the buccal point on this side, or the center point on this side, then I need to make sure I place the buccal and lingual points on the same side accordingly. So all the number 1s have to go on the same side, and all the number 2s have to go on the same side. So now I'm going to place my center ridge point. Then I'll go over to the opposite side retromolar pad. And these points should be placed on the very center, the most buccal point, and the most lingual point of the retromolar pads. And now I'm going to place my last 2 canine points. And that should complete marking your characteristic points. One thing to note here is that the points are color coded. So you can see that the blue points are all either the tuberosities or the retromolar pads. The red points are the canine points, and then the green points are the incisive papilla and center ridge points. So visually, you can tell if you misclicked or something like that, that you've got things out of position here. They can be dragged around, like I mentioned before. But if they're really far off, you can just go ahead and clear all and remark all the points. Once you've finished that, then you'll go ahead and select next, and it'll take you to your jaw boundaries. So this is going to be your borders for your dentures. So just like before, when we trimmed up the scans, we're going to grab this green icon here, and we'll get the pencil icon. Now, depending on how you want to mark your borders, if you like to overextend, you want them right where they're supposed to be, or maybe you're marking them short because you know that there's going to be an additional wash impression or something like that, you can. So the one thing I will mention here as a guide is there is a light reflection here down in these border areas. That is actually showing you the deepest part of the vestibule there. It's not exact, but it does give you a ballpark as to where that's at. So as long as I mark my points along that light source, I should be able to get it really close to where that deepest part of the vestibule is. And you can see as I move my views, that light source moves for me. So I can continue to move my views around and mark that right where I want it. So you can see there, I made a mistake. That's fine if you do that. Just continue on and complete out your outline. So if I go ahead and connect with my first point now, I can go in and fix this. So if I just come here and left click and drag the points, I can do that. Or I can right click on the outline and go here to fast edit line. And now I can left click and redraw where I want that to go. So that's the easier way to fix that. I can also right click, turn it back off. And then if I right click again, I can show local cross section here. So when I grab a point, I can see exactly where that point is on the outline. And as I drag it, you can see the little blue dot on the 2D cross section moves with it. So I can place that right where I want it to be. So if I want to get it right into that deepest part of the vestibule, I just follow that cross section there. See, as I move these points into that light source here, they're really close to the deepest part of the vestibule. And this will take me into my survey and blockout step. So the whole purpose of this step is to make sure that I don't have too many undercuts on the fit surface of my denture. So I do want to make sure I take a look at this now. The path of insertion that it gives me is not always correct. So this one is actually kind of tilted towards the post-palatal seal, which obviously we'd never put in a denture that way. So the first thing I want to do is to make sure I set the path of insertion so that I can analyze it properly. Now, with an upper, typically you're going to roll those in from the facial. So I'm going to tip my view here to more of a facial view and see if I can't see some more of these undercuts that I have on the buccal bone here, just under the ridge. And then I'm going to hit the set from view button here on the left. When I do that, it's going to change that path of insertion arrow here to that view. And now I can go ahead and analyze. All these undercuts that I'm seeing here in the fit surface are less than 1 millimeter deep. So I'm pretty confident that I won't have any fit issues with this particular denture. So that being said, I'm not going to block anything out. So under the settings here at the lower left, I'm going to leave this set as none. And then I'm going to go next. Then it gives me a wax trimming step here where I can either add or remove any block out wax that I want. And again, I'm not really going to, I don't feel like I need to block anything out here. So I'm just going to go next again. Here on the lower, the one place that I usually use the automatic block out for is these areas here where the retromolar pads lean inward towards each other. So you can see I've got a little bit here, got quite a bit here. So this time I'm going to turn on the block out. So over here at the lower left, I'm going to use the block out angle here. And then I like to set mine to 0. What that will do is it will generate straight up and down block out walls based on your path of insertion. So everything will be blocked out along the parallelism with this arrow. So when I do that, anywhere where I have color coding, it's going to block that out. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and hit next. And then one of the things you'll notice is it didn't just block out the retromolar pad areas that I usually block out. It blocked out quite a bit more. It looks at everything that has any kind of color coding on it for undercuts, and it will block those out. So for example, this area here, if I did not want this block out, I could just use the minus tool here and go ahead and remove that. This will keep you from not, losing too much of your retention. So I'll go ahead and remove some of that to make sure that I don't sacrifice the retention of the denture. You'll notice that in some cases it looks like it's adding block out wax back, but what it's actually doing is it's taking that block out wax and making it right to the surface of the scan. So it's actually not adding anything. It's just it's kind of misleading here as to the way that it visually looks. But once you do this and it stops adding or removing, that's a good sign that you don't have any more that you need to remove there. You can also go a little bit more precise with it and make your circle size smaller so that it doesn't continuously try to pull it through different directions like it was for me. So I'll just make sure that I've got all this really removed, and I really just want it under those retromolar pads. So now we're good there. And I'll go ahead and select next. And this will take us into our smile composer. So this is the area where you're going to select teeth. Now, one of the things that you have to watch here for is there are some denture tooth providers that require you to bridge your teeth together when you're designing with them. So most of the paid ones, such as the Dentsupply libraries, the Ivoclar libraries, require that. There are some free ones that do not. If you have the Fabulous Smiles library from 3Shape, that one does not. Also, the Nobilium libraries do not. I believe the Colzer ones do, but the Vertex Dental ones do not. So that there's quite a bit of different ones. There is a list, and you can also check with the provider, and they will tell you whether or not you have to bridge them or not. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my provider box and choose whose libraries I want to use. So for me, I'm just going to use a free one. So I've got these two Nobilium ones here. I'll use the Masad, which is a nicer library. When you go into the tooth card selection here, they have all the different libraries listed. One of the things that you can do to make it a little easier, so you're not having to choose each individual card, is you can go over to this Show Full Arch Libraries Only, and it will switch it over to where everything is set for you. So it matches the upper and lower anterior cards together with the posterior card. So really all you're doing is choosing the full arch of teeth instead of just the anterior, and it will let you, it will give you everything that goes with that together. So the way that this library works is the way that the cards are listed here. So this IO, that's an ovoid library. The IS is a square library, and then the ITs are tapered, so you can choose them based off of that. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to grab, I'll just grab a square library here. So once you select one, it will populate all the card images down here. And if you really want to see what it looks like with the patient, you can go ahead and apply it on the left here, and then it will populate the main screen and show you what it looks like. So that is what this library looks like. Now, if I were unhappy with it and I wanted to choose a different mold shape, I could just go in here and choose a different one, and then hit the apply button again, and it will switch it out for that new one that I just chose. One of the things that's nice about doing the digital dentures is I'm not set to the size of the mold anymore. So if I like a shape of a mold, but it's too big or too small, I can actually stretch those and make those work. So this mold is a little big for this patient. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move these forward. So I'm in the very first tool that it defaults to, which is the global transformation tool. This one will allow you to move the arches of teeth around. Everything stays locked together in occlusion, which is really nice. So I'm going to position those out. I can turn on my wax rim and see where those teeth used to be. So I can actually slide this out and set it really close to where the teeth should be. And then from there, I can analyze it and see if the mold is too big or too small. If it's too big, I can go ahead and start to resize it. So if I go to these green control points here and I hold the control key on my keyboard, I can proportionately resize everything. So I'll turn off the wax rim here so you can see that. So it shrinks them all down or makes them all bigger based on what your need is here. So I'm going to use the wax rim here and resize them a little bit so that they fit. I'll slide them back forward so that I can see their size there a little. And then from there, I can make some more size changes. So if I need to make these wider a little bit, I can widen them just without resizing all of it. I can bring this down to get that gingival margin. So these green lines are the gingival margins. So I can get that positioned right where the original gingival margins were. And then I can make sure that the size of the teeth match what the size of the original teeth were. So now I've got those anterior teeth fairly close to where they were. So now I'm going to switch tools here. So over here on the left, I have all 5 of my design tools that I'm going to use. I typically don't use this arch setup tool. It doesn't work real well and it causes a lot of issues. So I typically will skip over that and go to the middle tool, which this is the manual arrangement tool. So what's nice about this is if I take a look now at where my tooth positions are. So let's say I've got the incisal edge about where I want it, but the necks of the teeth are kind of tucked in a little bit. So if I single click on a tooth, I'll get these control points. If I grab this large one up here at the top, it will let me roll out the necks of all the anterior teeth. So I can get those positioned pretty close to where the original teeth were. Once I get those, if it overdoes, usually it will overdo the canines here. If it overdoes those, I can fix those in the individual transformation tool. So I'm not real concerned about those right now. The other thing I can do here is I can take a look at the lowers, and if I feel like they're in the right position, which those all look pretty good, then I can move into the posterior here and make some changes. So I'm going to hide my wax rim a little bit more. I'm also going to turn off my upper arch. So when I look at this, I can see from a top-down view of where my ridge actually is. All these lines on here, these are created by Pound's triangle. And this is based off of where those characteristic points were marked earlier on. So as long as I did those accurately, these lines will all be accurate. So it's actually showing me quite a bit of information here. I've got my neutral zone. So that's the outermost edge of the area where you have to stop placing the teeth. So I can kind of see here that I'm a little outside of it back there. And when I look at this side, I'm kind of close to it as well. So you really want your lower teeth over the ridges. So I can do this two ways here. So if I left click and grab the first bicuspid here, I can grab the entire segment of upper and lower posterior teeth on this side, and I can position it where I need to. And then if I grab the last molar, I can swing that arch in and out to position those about where I need to go. Then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So those all look like they're positioned pretty well now. And I always verify based on where the wax rim sat, because the patient actually wore those teeth for a while. So I can see that I'm kind of above that occlusal plane a little bit. So if I go back to my main global transformation tool, it's a really easy fix. I just rotate that back end down some to get those teeth on that plane. And then I want to verify that I haven't shortened my incisal edges. So I'll also go ahead and use the blue control point to drag those back down to where they're supposed to be here in the anterior. So that all looks pretty good now. So from this tool, I'll switch over to my individual transformation tool here. So this will allow me to just do individual teeth. So this is where I'll fix how far out the necks of these canines are. So I want to make sure that I have symmetric design turned on here on the left. And then I'm going to come over here and use the red control point from the bottom and rotate these back in. So you can see as I do that, it does both sides. So that looks quite a bit better. I may need to bring them both out a little bit so that I get some of that penetration through the blue. And then that looks to be in a good spot there. I can also make individual changes to any of these teeth back here. So this morphing tool, if I want to adjust the heights of contours or close brazier spaces, I can do that. So what I'll do here is I'll adjust my circle size to make it slightly than the area I'm trying to fix. So I'm going to change this height of contour right here. So I can left click and grab holding the control key down, and I can pull that down. And that will allow me to straighten up some of these heights of contours so they're not as bulbous there. And then I'll go ahead and go over to the other side and do that as well. And then I can also make some changes to the labs if I want. One of the things that we used when we set traditional dentures is if we didn't like certain aspects of a card of teeth, we could just switch out those teeth for certain other carded teeth. Now we don't have to do that because we can actually reshape the teeth themselves. So we can still use one card of teeth for everything, which makes it much easier. So I'm going to shape these a little bit. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll look for any spaces in between the teeth. You especially want to do this if you're not bridging the teeth together, because if you don't, it will lapse. So you can see here in this lateral, I've got a gap between it and central. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the, and I'm going to bring it to meet contact. That'll close that gap for me. So now I need to bring in the vertical articulator and check the occlusion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hide this box at the bottom with all the tooth libraries in it. To do that, there's an arrow here on the right hand side of that box that faces to the right. If I select that, it will minimize the box for me. Next, I'm going to hide the lower arch. So all I see is the teeth here. This will just make it easier when I'm trying to make adjustments and things with the virtual articulator. And then I'm going to come over to the left-hand side toolbar here, and about halfway down, you'll see the icon for the virtual articulator. It looks like an articulator, and then if you select it, it'll bring up the virtual articulator. Now, with this tool, the first thing that we want to do is we want to align the teeth in this plane. This will position us the virtual articulator the way that we're supposed to be. So now that I've got it positioned, I want to make sure again that the posterior sides balance out, because that has to do with the relationship to the condyles on that virtual articulator. If there is a specific articulator system that you like and you want to use it, in this box that pops up on the left, if you drop down this little black arrow here, it will give you all the different articulators that are in the 3Shape software. So you can choose from there. And also, if you need to open or close the vertical pin, you'll want to make sure you use this opening and sisal pin and type the value into this box. And then once you type it, you want to hit the lock button, and that will lock it in. So I'm going to go here to the virtual articulation box. There's 3 icons up at the very top. I want the rightmost looks like an articulator. And when I select that, it'll take me to the function box here. So what I'm going to do, make sure that 3 of these boxes are checked here. And I choose basically which function that I want to use. So I'm going to start with lateral movement. So this hand turned on and these 2 turned on. And what I do is I'm going to look at my teeth here from front, and I'm going to left click and grab the inside pin here, and I'm going to move over to one side, and I'm going to stop. What this does is it's going to let me look in here and see what's going on when I function. So I can see I'm getting blue markings. That's functional movement markings on those posterior teeth. So what this tells me is that there's not one tooth that's interfering in this functional movement. So I'm going to go up to the box and reset. So here, right under that articulator icon, a little circled arrow here that we're going to hit, and that will reset it to centric. And now I'm just going to go to the opposite side. And I'm going to look at that function and make sure that I'm getting the markings everywhere as well. So everything looks good. So my lateral excursions look really good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this box, turn off the lateral movements, and turn on the protrusive and retrusive, and just make sure I'm getting good functional contact with anterior to the end. So it appears that the centrals might cause a interference, but if you go ahead and look a little closer, all of the posterior teeth are marking. So it's really not a interference that the centrals are creating. It actually looks like maybe the canines are too far out of occlusion. So if I wanted to fix that, I could either adjust the positions of the lowers into a better relationship with the upper canines. Usually that's what I'll do if the aesthetics look really good, meaning the cusps are the right length. These upper cusps look a little short, so I'm going to go ahead and pull them down just a little bit. And now I'm going to redo that functional movement. So, and again, it looks like they're still out. And I didn't create any interference because I've still markings on those posterior teeth. So I'll continue to do this until I get the proper function. So this time I might take these lower canines and maybe pull forward slightly. So now that I've tested it and it looks like it's good, I'm going to close out of the virtual articulator by clicking that X at the top right. Now that I've got teeth set where I always verify, make sure that the tooth positions look good, which these look good. So now I'm ready to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and select next. If I get this error or this warning error, these green circles that are on the teeth, they are closer than 2 millimeters to the scan, then you will get this warning that pops up. So it's telling me that 20 violate the millimeters space there. So I'm going to select no just to show you what this looks like. So I'll turn on my scan. So what it told me was number 11 is an issue. And I'm not real concerned about it, so it's most likely this lingual here is too close. But as long as this green line doesn't pass through the scan, I should be okay there. And if I look down here, number 27, kind of the same thing. It's a little close, but it actually doesn't pass through the scan, so it'll still let me generate. So I'm going to go ahead and select next now. We've got our teeth set where we want them. It's similar to waxing the denture. So I want to first make sure that my base thickness is set properly here. So the TrueDent material requires a 2.5 millimeter base thickness. So I want to make sure I set that. And that thickness is 2.5 on the upper and lower. So you want to make sure that that's always going to be set at that 2.5. This relief value here, this only applies to if you're placing a relief zone. So what a relief zone does is it adds extra space inside the denture. So what you would do is you would select the draw relief zone button here, and then you would just outline where you want. So if I wanted, for example, these rugae to be not as a fit denture rest, I just create that outline there and then put in this relief zone box how much extra space I want, and that would give me that extra relief there. The other thing I need to do here is come down to the general aesthetic and hit the preview button at the top left. It will show it to me. It does take a minute here to load. So now you can see it generated. You'll be able to see what the festooning and everything looks like here. If you want to change it, you can always click on a different one and preview it, and it will show you what it looks like. So I just selected the least amount here, and we'll see what it looks like. Make changes here as well. One of the things I've done with mine is I always make changes to the papilla lengths. They always seem to be too long, so you can see that kind of here in the central area and a few other areas. So what I'll do is I'll actually go in here and reduce down the interdentin papilla length and the width. And then if I re-preview it, it'll make it look a little bit better. We can always go in and fix some of these little gaps that you see in the later steps where you can sculpt the anatomy, but you just want to make sure that it looks fairly good. Later on, once you've designed a few of these and you see which sliders you always want to change, you can plug those into the control panel of your 3Shape software and go ahead and create these presets. So you can see I've got this drop down menu here with all these different presets in here. So rather than always having to change those sliders, I can go in here and select one, and you'll see that it presets the sliders where I usually set them. The things I also change is the root eminence height. I try to make it not go all the way to the border, and then I always change the papilla heights. So I'm going to go ahead and select next and move into the lower. And again, I want to make sure that I change my base thickness to be 2.5. And then anytime I use one of my presets on the upper, I always make sure I also use it on the lower so that they look similar. So I'll go ahead and select that and go next. Little changes that I want to make to just the teeth. So like I said before, if I'm unable to bring the papillas up high enough to fix some of these gaps, I can go ahead and close them here. So I use the morphing tool and I can adjust those a little bit. I can also use the spray cans here to correct any little issues that I don't like. Go ahead and select next, and now I'll sculpt the gingiva. So you can see it gives me this red outline here, or this red slider that allows me to see any areas where I have some undercuts. So I can go in here, for example, with my add tool and go ahead and correct a lot of the issues. Back here, depends on if you're going to pumice and polish or if you're going to put some kind of a glaze material on these, as to how you do the linguals. If I'm pumicing and polishing and I leave it like this is going to be a really difficult area for me to get into with that pumice wheel. So, I will here, and fill these areas in a little bit, so that they're a little flatter and not as extreme of an indentation in here. And that'll just make my life a little easier when I go to finish these. Um, with the sculpting, the last thing I usually do is I'll put the name in. Um, so, so the last thing I use here is I will put the name in. So if you want to do an embossing, you can do that here. And what you'll end up having to do is if you do that, you're going to have to fill it in with something. So you could use, some kind of light cure composite to fill that back in. Or you could do that in your GrabCAD software. If I'm going to go ahead and do here, I'll click the A icon, and then whatever name I want it to show in here, I will. Now, from my experience, when you go to do this, you want to make your text depth about -2 and your text height about 3.5. So the reason for that is it makes it large enough to where you actually can push some composite in there. Composite materials are typically a little not as runny as certain other materials, so it's hard to get it into the lettering when it engraves it, and be able to actually fill that in with little air bubbles and things like that. So these are the settings that I typically use with mine to get that material filled in there. So once I do that, I'll hit the add button here. It will attach to my mouse. Once I get it in position where I want it, then I'll hit the double arrows down here and apply it, and then that will engrave it in. And then you'll go ahead and select next. The cup mechanism here, this basically sets the path of insertion into the denture base, and it also sets the length of the teeth underneath the tissue. So one of the things that you can do here is you can try to lengthen these as high as it will let you go. And then in GrabCAD, when the coloring is applied to it, it'll almost give it this look like you can kind of see the root forms underneath the tissue a little bit. So what I recommend is using the highest value, which is 3 here, and then that will allow you to do that. So once you select it, then you'll hit next, and it will give you, sometimes it will give you this warning. So what this warning is telling you is that the tooth block intersects another tooth. With this particular setup for the TrueDent system, that's not a big deal because you're not actually creating 2 separate pieces and bonding them together. It will come out printed all as one piece. So you can just go ahead and say yes here. And then the other thing that you'll notice here is that you have this control point up above. So what I recommend doing this is making it set along axis of the tooth. Once you've finished and you hit next for the last time, it'll take you forward into the manufacturing settings here. So if you're using the TrueDent material file, it will already be set with everything at 0. If you're not, you want to make sure minimum thickness under teeth is set at 0 and glue space is set at 0 and that drill compensation is turned off. You don't want the drill compensation on it. So once those settings are in there, then you'll go ahead and select next. Right. So once it is with the up, now you just rinse and repeat the lower. Right. Now that it's finished with the pre-manufacturing step, it'll take us to the save step here where it will save everything that we've done. So once it does, you can go ahead and hit the close button here at the top left. And it will back into the Dental Manager software here. So now you can see the status on our case changed to designed. So now what we need to do is find our files. So if we click here, we go to advanced. The first thing we need to do is generate those outputs. So this will generate the design files for you so you can take those into GrabCAD. Depending on the option that we choose, it will either give us 3MF files or STL files. So set up for 3MF files. So now if I go back and right click on the case again and go to advanced, and go to explore CAM here, it takes us to all of our files here. Now these are all ready to go into your GrabCAD software. So I just wanted to thank you for watching this video.